He has gone down in history as the man who repeatedly warned Joseph Stalin that the Germans were about to attack. But his intelligence was deeper and better than just that. And so was he, the spy Richard Sorge. Welcome to a World War II in real-time bio special, where I take a closer look at the major or interesting figures of the war, today featuring Richard Sorge. So, a Soviet spy in Japan and China, supposedly working for the Germans. Well, Richard Sorge, and before you write in, he was not American and British, so it's not Richard, right? Was actually born in what is now Azerbaijan, but what was then in the Russian Empire. In 1895, the youngest of 9 children of a German mining engineer. The family moved to Berlin when Richard was 3. When the Great War began, he enlisted in the German army, serving on the Western Front with the field artillery. There, he lost 3 fingers and had both legs broken, giving him a lifelong limp. But more importantly to his development, during the war, slowly turned from a strong German nationalist to a disillusioned non-committal, and then to a Marxist communist. The war to him was utterly meaningless and a waste of life. He studied economics and got a PhD in political science, and joined the German Communist Party. He emigrated to the nascent Soviet Union when his political views kept getting him fired. Once there, and working for the Comintern, he was recruited by Soviet intelligence. They sent him around Europe undercover as a journalist. In spite of the fingers and the limp, Sorge was an extremely attractive and charismatic individual. In 1921, he married Christiane Gerlach, the ex-wife of one of his former professors. They moved to Moscow in 1924, and in 1929, he joined the Red Army's military intelligence, what would later be called the GRU. That same year, he was sent to both Britain and Germany and joined the Nazi Party while in Germany as instructed. He was also divorced from Gerlach, who was unaware of his spying activity. Sent to Shanghai in 1930, his cover was as an agricultural journalist while he worked to initiate a communist revolution. There, he met Japanese news correspondent Hotsumi Ozaki, who I'll get back to. Sorge was recalled to Moscow in 1932, wrote a book about Chinese agriculture in 1933, married Yekaterina Maximova, whom he'd met in China, and then was sent to Japan to organize an intelligence network. He reached Tokyo in September 1933. His newspaper credentials and his Nazi Party membership got him access to the German embassy as an expert on Japan. Thing is, Sorge didn't go around just blindly parroting Nazi leadership or idolizing them. He often spoke negatively about them, about stupid things they said or they did. This totally boosted his credibility, because someone that dared to speak his mind like that could only be what he claimed to be, a true German patriot who only wanted to better his country. Blunt words and a war wound were the visible evidence of that. He put together his network, which included Ozaki, who came from a wealthy family but hated Japan's government system and believed it had to go to save Japan from fascism. That's a very brief summary. Sorge also grew close with Eugen Ott, the German military attaché to Japan. Ott had Sorge tour Manchuria with him in 1934, and Sorge's subsequent report was a hit in Berlin. Sorge very quickly became Ott's most trusted advisor and even began an affair with Ott's wife. You may think this would jeopardize things, but Ott actually was cool with it, thinking that with Sorge's looks it was bound to happen and that it would soon blow over. He was actually right about the last part. Ott also thought Sorge too valuable for his insights on Japan to lose. Max Clausen, a German communist, was Sorge's radio operator, and he sent Sorge's dispatches in numerical code using a one-time pad for each one. This was a hassle, but it's pretty much unbreakable using a random key. The Japanese could pick up these unauthorized transmissions, but they could not locate the source or crack the codes. In 1936, Sorge got together with the young waitress Hanako Ishii. This would actually be his great love, despite his current wife. By that year, all of his efforts were paying off. Ott learned from the Japanese army about the talks that would lead to the anti-Comintern Pact, and he shared this info with Sorge. In 1938, Ott became German ambassador to Japan, and this opened up pretty much everything to Sorge info-wise. Since Ott shared sensitive info with Sorge, so too did the embassy staff. Gestapo Colonel Joseph Meisinger, the embassy's police attaché, said that Ott and Sorge were so close that all normal reports from attachés to Berlin became mere appendages to the overall report written by Sorge and signed by the ambassador. All was not well between Japan and the Soviet Union at this time. Okay, General Genrikh Lyushkov was a high-ranking officer in the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, right? During the Moscow trials, the showpieces of Joseph Stalin's purges, Lyushkov even led the interrogations of Lev Kamenev and Grigory Zinoviev, two members of the original Politburo. Well, by 1938, he began to feel that he too would fall victim to the purges, so he defected to Japan in June. As you may imagine, Moscow was pretty eager to know what he was telling Tokyo. Berlin sent an intel officer to help with the debriefing, and Sorge got hold of a copy of it. It not only said that if Japan attacked the USSR, the Red Army would collapse in a day, it also supposedly disclosed military codes and deployments. Stuart Goldman writes the following. 6 weeks later, a Soviet-Japanese border clash erupted at the site of Lyushkov's defection, sparked by over-aggressive Soviet efforts to seal the border there. Intelligence from the Sorge Ring shaped the Soviets' tough response. Japan's leaders, preoccupied with their war in China, were determined to prevent this from becoming a large-scale conflict. So Moscow threw thousands of men with armor and air support into the battle. After 2 weeks of fighting, the Battle of Lake Khasan ended with Japan accepting Moscow's terms. This was just a warm-up for Khalkhin Gol, which I talk about in the regular weekly episodes, but which has a similar dynamic. Sorge again reports definitely that Japan does not want the volatile situation in the summer of 1939 to become full war, and the Red Army subsequently decisively beats the Japanese in August. But while this is happening, Japan is trying to make an anti-Soviet alliance with Germany. Sorge reports on this as well. Stalin then blows everybody's mind by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact with Germany, with that information in mind. With Hitler now unworried about Stalin's response, his territorial ambitions in Poland are made real, the war begins, France and Britain are against Germany, Japan is no longer an immediate threat, and the Soviet Union is safely on the sidelines of it all and able to take chunks of land in Eastern Europe with impunity. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, is in the planning works for a full year. Sorge first reports to Moscow in December 1940, a stern warning that Germany is building up for an attack. His reports continue and become more urgent as 1941 unfolds. On May the 6th, he tells Moscow, possibility of outbreak of war at any moment is very high. On May 30th, he reports that the attack will begin in late June. Just 1 day later, a German colonel, Edwin Scholl, tells Sorge personally that between 170 and 190 divisions are assembled on the Soviet border, and the launch date is June 15th. Sorge sends that intel to Moscow June 1st. We already did a whole special on Soviet intelligence on Operation Barbarossa, so I won't go into Stalin's reactions again here, but let's just say that Sorge's warnings are not heeded. When the operation does become reality, Moscow turns to Sorge for help figuring out how the Japanese will react to the situation. Would they too invade the USSR, but from the east? The German embassy is certainly trying to persuade the Japanese to take this course of action. But as we've seen in the regular episodes, Japan is desperate for resources, and the British, Dutch, and French colonies in Southeast Asia, which none of those nations can really defend, become more tempting targets than the Eastern USSR, as the Japanese Navy gains ascendancy over the army. But in late June, that is far from obvious. Sorge reports that Japan is going to move into southern Indochina and will not attack the USSR for the time being unless they are quickly defeated in the West. Within weeks, Sorge's intel proves to be correct. But in July, after the Japanese occupation of Indochina, the Western Allies cut off Japan's imported supply of oil. This certainly encourages those who wish to attack south, but Germany's quick victories do the same for those who wish to attack north. It is once again uncertain, but this time it is Hotsumi Ozaki who learns from Japan's high command they will not attack in the north until at least 1942. In late August, Sorge repeats this intelligence to Moscow. On September 14th, in light of Japan's more and more concrete decision to attack southward, he repeats this more emphatically, specifically that Japan will not attack the USSR until Moscow had fallen, the Japanese army in Manchukuo is 3 times the Soviet Far Eastern forces, and a civil war has begun in Siberia. Although Sorge's intel on this in and of itself makes it possible for the Red Army to withdraw divisions from Siberia to help with the defense of Moscow, he is not the only source in this case. Moscow has by now broken Japan's diplomatic codes and gets other info that no attack will come this year. Sorge is, by this time, the most trusted source, however, and his intelligence is of enormous importance in the fall of 1941, as Stalin moves 18 divisions from east to west, supported by armor and aircraft. But by this time, it has also put Sorge in grave danger. The sheer volume of mystery messages the Japanese intercept lead them to think, correctly, that there is a whole spy ring at work. Berlin has also, by 1941, had Meisinger monitor Sorge, as they too are suspicious of him. Meisinger concludes that any thoughts that Sorge is a spy are nonsense. But the Japanese are hot on his trail. His arrest comes, typically, after fairly dramatic circumstances. One of Ozaki's agents named Miyagi, not that Miyagi, recruited someone who's brought in for questioning. That someone gives up Miyagi, so they bring in Miyagi, and he doesn't want to betray anyone, so he jumps out of the window. But he does not die, and he just breaks a bunch of bones. Under questioning again, he gives up Ozaki and Sorge. Richard Sorge is arrested October 18th, 1941. Ott is notified that his friend is arrested on suspicion of espionage, but they don't specify as a Soviet agent for a few months. They don't actually really know anything themselves for around a week. That's how long Sorge holds out before revealing that he is a spy. But whose spy? The Japanese first think, because of his Nazi party membership, that he's from the Abwehr, German military intelligence. They don't claim him. When tortured, he reveals he's a Soviet spy, but they don't claim him either. Even when the Japanese offer to trade him for one of their spies, the Soviets still do not recognize him. He spends the next 3 years at Sugamo prison. He is interrogated over many months and is finally tried and convicted of being a communist agent. Hanako Ishii is apparently the only person who visits him while he is in prison. From what I understand, he agrees to give up all the details of his time in Japan if Ishii and the wives of other members of the spy ring are left alone. The Japanese apparently agree to this. Breaking the timeline and going into Sorge's future, his wife at home in the USSR is arrested in 1942 on charges that she is a German spy, since, you know, her husband's a German citizen. I mean, never mind that he's a GRU agent. She is sent to the Gulag and dies a year later. Sorge himself is sentenced to death in 1943, though he does not think he will be executed. He's confident he'll be swapped for a Japanese spy. The Japanese make more overtures to the USSR, but they continue to deny all knowledge of him, and on November 7th, 1944, Richard Sorge is hanged at Sugamo prison. Hotsumi Ozaki is hanged the same day. Post-war, Ishii secures Sorge's remains and has him buried in Tokyo. His tombstone reads, "Here lies a hero who sacrificed his life fighting against war and for world peace." Although anything beyond this war is really beyond the scope of this channel, he is finally recognized by the Soviet government as Hero of the Soviet Union in 1964. And I will leave the tale of this remarkable man right here. It could have been 5 times as long. If you want a good read, Gordon Prang's Target Tokyo is a pretty rollicking account of Sorge and his spies. I was planning on reading out the scene of his execution from that book here, but this episode is overlong as it is, so you will just have to read it by yourself. In the final episode of Season 1 of our Between Two Wars series, we talk about Khalkhin Gol and the final days before World War II broke out. You can check that out right here. And please support us at patreon.com or timeghost.tv, because it is your support that allows us to do all these bios and things that help flesh out World War II, which we cover in real time every single week. And that was really bad. See you next time.